Hello, and welcome to the McKnight's Workforce Development Forum. This session is entitled Inside the Minds of Today's Healthcare Job Seekers. I'm McKnight Senior Living Editor Lois Bowers, and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of McKnight Senior Living, McKnight's Long-Term Care News, and McKnight's Home Care. What are potential employees looking for in the job search process and in a position itself? How can you attract the best candidates and convince them to join your community? Today, we're going to hear answers to those questions by looking at the results of a survey of more than 675 job seekers. You'll come away with steps you can take to improve your job offerings, your hiring process, and your technology so that you can attract the talent you want to attract, fill your open positions more quickly, and ultimately provide better care and services, because that's what it's ultimately about, isn't it? We'll get to our presentation in a minute, but first we have some housekeeping information to share. If you're having any audio problems with this broadcast, please first check the volume control on your device. This is the most common cause of hearing issues. The sound should be coming from your computer speakers. Today's presentation will be available for download. Also, we will have time for questions and answers near the end of today's presentation. If you have any questions about the information presented, please feel free to send them directly to us at any time during this hour by clicking on the Questions and Answers tab on the left. Questions that we don't get to in real time will be answered afterward. Today's program is made possible by support from Hireology. After this webinar, you can visit the company website at hireology.com. And now I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Adam Robinson. Adam is the founder and CEO of Hireology. He is the author of The Best Team Wins and has more than 20 years of experience in areas of hiring and selection management. Adam was named a top 25 HR industry game changer by Workforce Magazine and has for 3 years been a finalist for the EY and Entrepreneur of the Year. Under his leadership, Hireology has been recognized several times nationally for its growth on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing U.S. companies. Adam also has shaped Hireology's company culture, which has been nationally recognized on the Inc. Best Workplaces and Entrepreneur Top Company Cultures list. Locally, Adam has been named to the Chicago Tribune Blue Sky Network, a list of Chicago's most influential entrepreneurs, and Hireology has been named to both the Crain's Chicago Business and Built in Chicago's Best Places to Work lists. You can read more about Adam in the information we have provided. This is such an important topic for any company on the long-term care continuum. So let me now turn over the microphone to Adam so he can get started. Adam, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much and welcome everybody. I'm excited to talk with you today about a challenge that I know we're all facing here in this industry. It's been more acute than ever. And that's how do we find, hire, and keep the right people to keep our roster full and to stay staffed to meet today's demand. I want to start off jumping right in talking about current market conditions. And so today it feels as though there are two conflicting job markets. On the one hand is the technology space. We all read about this every day. Many businesses in this sector, I would say most businesses in this sector, are grappling with layoffs and hiring freezes due to the recession in the tech sector, even though we may not have one formally across the United States. Certainly technology is in recession and due to overhiring during the pandemic. And this has left the number of active job seekers in this sector overweighing the number of open jobs. And we read about that every day. But in our market, in the skilled labor market, a completely different situation is at play. Employers like healthcare facilities have never fully recovered the jobs they were forced to eliminate at the onset of the pandemic, and now, more than 3 years later, are still struggling to attract talent for these roles. The workers in this sector have the upper hand, as you all well know, really forcing employers like you to adjust your offerings and procedures and processes to meet job seekers' needs or risk losing top talent and eventually taking a hit to your bottom line due to staffing shortages. Overall, there are about 339,000 jobs created last month in May, which far exceeded economists' projections. I think this has been defying expectation for some time now. The unemployment rate ticked up slightly from the previous month to 3.7%, and the workforce participation rate also ticked up to 62.6%. And all this is to say that employers keep adding jobs to the economy, largely in these skilled labor sectors that I mentioned before, but more people now are entering the workforce, likely due to softness elsewhere in the economy, but also just the fact that generally pandemic era surpluses and personal savings have started to come down. Inflation's starting to eat into that savings rate in U.S. households, and more people are coming off the sidelines and looking to work again. So within this crisis and labor shortage is an opportunity for healthcare operators like you to take advantage of some things to put your best foot forward and build the team you need to win. So if you're feeling the strain of a worker shortage, you're not alone. A quick look at the news shows assisted living homes and other similar healthcare facilities are really struggling. So it's not just you. Most are unable to staff up to the levels they'd like to, and it's impacting quality of care, leaving many unprofitable right now. So what's the answer? Well, what we'd all love to do is simply create more workers to fill these roles, but of course that isn't possible. While it's worth it to encourage young people to enter these types of professions, there's only so much we can do about the number of active job seekers in the market at any given time. And so the key is to better understand what those who are out there looking are looking for, what they expect, and to make the necessary adjustments to meet them where they are with jobs, benefits, and flexibility that they actually want to take. And that's exactly what we set out to do with our annual applicant research at Hireology. So we've surveyed over 800 healthcare applicants with questions with the following themes. We wanted to ask about job seeker expectations for the applicant and for their hiring process. Second, what top job seekers are looking for in a new role? And third, what keeps great employees loyal? And we're actually revealing those results today live with you, all for the very first time. So you're going to see this new research first. So we broke down the results into 6 different takeaways, which represent the primary characteristics of the modern healthcare job seeker. Now, first and foremost, the data shows is that healthcare job seekers today are really eager to work and to get to work. It's easy to assume that the problems are simply that people don't want to work, but the data shows that that's quite the opposite. These are actively looking for work, these job seekers, and they're ready to be interviewed and be hired very quickly. In fact, our research found that just over a quarter of respondents said that they want to be interviewed, not just contacted by an employer, but actually interviewed within 48 hours of applying to a job, while over half said they'd like to be interviewed within 3 days. Now, that means your team needs to be equipped to contact people almost immediately so that you can find time to set up an interview within that initial 48 to 72 hours. And why does this matter so much? Well, it matters because nearly half of candidates admitted that they'd be likely to ghost if those expectations for timing were not met. So in other words, by simply waiting a day too long to schedule that first interview, you could miss out on nearly half of the best candidates on the market at any given time who are likely taking jobs elsewhere at employers who are moving faster. So literally the most important thing you can do to drive success is speed up your process from initial application review to that first interview and to really do it within the first 3 days. Another point of evidence to our argument that most job seekers are eager to get on your payroll is that 57% of healthcare job seekers say they accepted the first offer they received in their search. They're not waiting around to compare offers. If they're good with the offer and the offer for the role gives them what they're looking for, they're taking it, period. So first to offer is winning the vast majority of the time. Now, along with being eager to work, today's top healthcare job seekers are open-minded when it comes to where they look for work. They're not relying on just one main channel to search for jobs, and they're not putting all of their eggs into just one or two baskets. So let's take a closer look at that. First, let's look at what I mean by not putting their eggs in one or two baskets. 34% said they applied to more than 16 jobs in their most recent job search. Technology makes it a lot easier to do that these days. And a total of 46% said they applied to more than 11 jobs. What this means is that when someone applies to your job, they also have about a dozen additional opportunities in the works. So if you're not able to give them what they want in terms of hiring speed or within the job itself, they're casting such a wide net, and there's just so much opportunity out there in the market that they can quickly move on to other options. They're just not going to wait for you to go at your speed. You need to go at their speed. Similarly, they're not going to rely on just one or two channels to search for jobs. They're going to see what they can get across a range of sourcing channels. Of course, by and large, general job boards like Indeed are the most commonly used source, but we ask people to check all that applied to them, and you'll see that no other source really stands out as the second highest. It's pretty close. People are out there Googling, they're going to social media, they're going directly to your career site, and they're asking their friends and acquaintances, right? So in other words, people are searching high and low for the right opportunity, and they're not leaving any stone unturned. So for you, this means that your chances of reaching the best possible job seekers out there is by having a presence on a range of channels, not just putting ads up on job boards, although that is a critical component to your overall success. And then I wanted to make a note about referrals because I think it's really important. While in the last question, only about 31% said they're actively networking with friends and peers when looking for work, nearly 90% said that if someone they know and trust vouches for a company, they're more likely to apply to that job. Now, this speaks to the benefit of having a referral program internally that incentivizes your team to reach out to their networks rather than waiting for a candidate to contact them via networking. So by and large, job seekers will apply to jobs if someone they know encourages them to do so, right? But because they're not necessarily seeking these networking opportunities out themselves, it's really important to put the onus on your existing team to reach out and start those conversations. So in other words, don't wait for friends to talk organically. Incentivize your current employees to drive referrals through a sharp and effective employee referral program. Now, we know job seekers will leave no stone unturned in their search for what's right for them, but what does right mean? It's easy for employers to assume that job seekers are simply holding out for the highest paying option, but the reality that might surprise you is that job seeker expectations are much more nuanced than that. Of course, pay matters, and it always will, but job seekers are willing to take lower pay, right, for their job. They're willing to take lower pay if the rest of their expectations are met. So let's take a look at those expectations. We asked applicants what they would do when presented with two options in a similar pay range. Only 9% said they would always choose the higher paying option. Said differently, 91% of job seeker surveys said they'd be open to taking the lower paying offer if the right benefits were offered. Now, this is up from 84% in 2022. Now, which benefits would job seekers prioritize over pay? It really comes down to these top three. Number one, schedule flexibility. Second is career growth. And third is fulfilling work. Good working culture rounded out the list in number four. So while benefits like schedule flexibility and career growth are fairly easy for employers to define and for seekers to identify, culture is a little more murky. It's not always clear at face value what an employer's culture might look like. And from an employer's perspective, it's not obvious what job seekers are even looking for in the culture department. So we asked respondents in an open-ended question to define what good company culture looks like to them. Here's a couple of examples. A good corporate culture fosters a positive work environment. We see this term come up over and over again, that values and supports employees. Other respondents said a supportive environment with enthusiastic leaders with a vision which is clear, shared, and the pathway forward is either well known or actively collaborated on with team members. Right. So what you find, a common thread here is a supportive environment where leaders are actively involved and engaged. Now, when analyzing all of the open-ended responses to this question, a few common themes emerge. So typically, from our research, good culture means, and these are terms used by the respondents, well-defined core values. Feedback is given when appropriate, both positive and constructive. There are growth and training opportunities for all types of roles. In other words, this is more than just a paycheck. The workforce is diverse, it's inclusive, and people are treated equitably. That comes up nearly every response. Leadership is transparent in business decisions, so people understand why things are happening, not just what's happening, and that people treat each other with kindness and empathy. Now, almost all of these characteristics are possible for you to control. Define clear core values and prioritize hiring people who embody those values. Now, at Hireology, we actually have a core value interview in our hiring process where we interview a potential hire through the lens of our core values. And what we find is that great candidates that are a fit for our culture are screening us as much as we're screening them. And when it's not a fit, it's really obvious to both. When it is a fit, that's also true. That's also important to offer a feedback loop and to train managers on how to properly provide that feedback, right? To offer training opportunities and to build out career paths. And of course, having a defined DEI strategy that's acted on is critical. Now, of course, you always want to be open and honest with your team and simply lead with kindness, right? That's, generally the golden rule is the one that works. Now, some of this might feel simple, but as a whole, this in reality is what people are looking for in a culture, and it's much more challenging to do this consistently. That's why so few companies do all of these things well. And I think where most organizations run into trouble with this is when leadership doesn't align with these characteristics. Factors like empathy, inclusion, and transparency are never going to trickle down if your leaders don't lead by example. So, in other words, it really starts at the top. And when asked where job seekers go to determine whether or not a potential employer's culture fits their definition, most, around 35%, say that they start with the employer's website. Surprisingly, this ranked higher than third-party review sites like Glassdoor, which is really the go-to starting point for about 29% of respondents. So this shows just how much value people are putting into your owned materials when it comes to your employment branding, right? So this brand is an asset that you really have to cultivate because it's the top thing that people check. Now, they're even trusting you over a third-party review site. So if you don't already have a career site that really tells the story of your company and illustrates your culture and values, that's really the first step to take. As a society, we've become accustomed to convenience in all aspects of our lives. Everything from ordering food to booking flights to scheduling doctor's appointments today can be done almost instantly and on any device and online. And the job search should really be no different. Most people expect applying to a job to be as easy as ordering a rideshare. And again, given the number of jobs they're applying to, they're not just going to complete an application or a hiring process that's overly complicated if they don't have to. So let's look at the details. Nearly 2/3 of respondents said they've given up on a job application simply because it took too long to complete. Similarly, 63% said they had chosen not to apply to a job they were interested in because the application required repeating information that was already on a resume, while 53% said the same about applications that required a cover letter. So again, compare this to something like ordering food or rideshare. You can do that easily online with the click of a few buttons. So why is applying for a job so much harder? They shouldn't have to repeat information, create logins, upload cover letters or documents, right? We want to gather the bare minimum information up front and then weed out the non-qualified candidates via automated screening and phone interviews. And we don't want to use an application to do the weeding out for us. Effectively, we're creating the world's worst lead generation form. People will just move on to the easier application. Now, job seekers' expectations for ease don't let up after they've completed that application. Nearly half of respondents have admitted to ghosting an employer at some point during the hiring and interviewing process, and I know you've all experienced this. This number is up significantly from last year, where only 20% made the same confession in our research. So the ghosting rate has doubled in the last 12 months. Now, why are candidates ghosting so frequently? Well, the number one reason for a candidate ghosting is a lack of communication from the employer, followed by the process just taking too long and the recruiter not responding to their application fast enough. Now, all three of these factors can be tied back to ease. They want it to feel seamless and convenient, and they want it to keep moving forward. They want this hiring process to continue with constant feedback. And again, if they feel like it's not, they've got plenty of other options. So speed is really the goal here. And when it comes to lack of communication from employers, we followed up and we asked, well, what exactly do you expect? More than a quarter like to hear or expect to hear from you at least once a day through the process. And a total of 60% want to hear from you at least every 2 days. So if you're not checking in with your candidates every 1 or 2 days, your chances of being ghosted by your best candidates is fairly high. And when I talk to operators in the market and they talk about ghosting, sometimes you hear the perspective, well, workers these days they're ghosting, right? They just don't have respect for the process like they used to. But when you dig into the data, what you find is employers don't have respect for their time or attention, and it's leading to long process delays, and it's leading to a lack of follow-up. And in a job market like this one, we just can't expect people to wait around for employers to get back to them. They're just not going to do that. We have to give them the same treatment that we expect from them. Now, much like the convenience angle, it should also go without saying that smartphones dominate our daily lives. I mean, they power everything from daily communication to paying bills to ordering anything we need. And again, applying to a job and moving through the hiring process is no different. Now, this is especially true for many of the roles that we're hiring for in this industry, and and where they're not at a desk or on a computer all day. So folks like nurses and CNAs expect to be able to apply, communicate with recruiters, and complete other hiring-related activity while on the go, while they're walking the floor. And so, it could be while they're on their break. It could be while they're on their commute. They want to do it not at a desk, and that means on their phone. In fact, when asked what device they use for the majority of their most recent job search and hiring process, 55% of respondents said entirely on their smartphone. Now, this is a number that has steadily increased over the years. Back in 2021, smartphone usage was still in the minority, and we have reached the tipping point where it is very clearly the dominant platform for job seekers today. So if we're not leveraging that platform effectively, we're just not going to be as successful as we could be. And nearly 60% said that they've given up on an application because it was too hard to perform on a mobile device. So not only do they prefer a mobile device in the process, most will actually drop out and move on to one of the dozens of other opportunities they have in the works if it's too hard for them to proceed on their phones. And so what I would say to you as a bit of homework is at the conclusion of this webinar, get out your phone and try to apply to a job at your own facility and just note the experience. Is it easy? Is it seamless? Or do you find yourself having to retype your work experience with your thumbs on your phone or create a login, right? Audit yourself, audit your own process and see how that feels. While we all have access to email on our phones, most respondents, nearly 60%, agreed that they typically check text messages before email, and about the same amount agreed that responding to text is easier than email. So not only do they prefer using their phones, they also prefer text as the mode of communication. They're going to check those texts before emails and respond to text before emails, right? So, as an employer looking to hire very quickly, we all know now how quickly speed factors into the equation of successful hiring. You should absolutely be reaching top candidates via text rather than email. In fact, we've been laying down a challenge to our customers. Of course, you can text and email through our platform, but we're saying text really should be the channel you're using. And you can think about your own life experience. I mean, how many unread personal emails do you have? When I ask that question to management teams, sometimes, you see numbers as high as 20 or 30,000 unread personal emails. Most people have zero unread text messages. And so it really speaks to, how do you like to communicate? I mean, you and job seekers, right? We're all the same in this market. We want to use our phone. We want to communicate through text. We want it to be easy. So now that we've outlined everything job seekers expect throughout the application and hiring process, what happens when you get it all right? Now, let's say you make a great hire because your process was easy and the job you offered met their needs. Now what? Well, for most employers, the reward is loyalty, which ultimately means you're preventing turnover, right? You're plugging that leak in the bucket, which enables you to provide better care at higher quality, cover more beds, and add to the bottom line. And that's where recruiting equals business impact. In fact, 73% of healthcare workers today say they are loyal to their current employer. Now, that high number might surprise you, but that's hot off the press. 73% say they've got loyalty to their current employer. Now, top reasons for this loyalty include, not surprisingly, the three things we said were most important on the application: flexibility and scheduling, work that has meaning, and fair pay. Again, pay doesn't top the list and ranks pretty similar to lots of other factors, indicating that simply hiking wages isn't the answer to recruiting and retaining top talent. Workers' values are a lot more nuanced than that. In fact, if you're competing based only on pay scale, essentially what you're doing is competing with talent in a commodity strategy where price wins. We don't want to be doing that because the next 50 cent an hour raise wins that person. That's a race to zero profit. We want to be competing for the things that really drive a decision. That's schedule flexibility, career path, and meaningful work. Now, another factor influencing loyalty is the onboarding process. How well you train, welcome, and integrate a new employee into your organization can make or break your long-term relationship with them. 81% of respondents who reported a positive onboarding experience said they are loyal to their current employer, compared to 53% of those who reported a negative onboarding experience. Nearly 50% difference based entirely on the way that you bring them into the organization at the very beginning. Now, this loyalty extends even after people choose to leave your organization. More than 3 in 4 respondents said they would be willing to return to an organization they previously worked for if the experience there was positive. And that speaks not only to creating a culture people appreciate and are willing to return to, but also speaks to the importance of maintaining relationships with employees after they leave your organization. Now, the latter involves building a database of previously hired talent and continuing to nurture those contacts with messaging about updates to your company. Maybe you've implemented a new job shadow program. Maybe you've got new training and benefits. Maybe you're opening or moving new facilities. There's no reason to start from scratch every time you have an open role. In fact, what you find is a high percentage of your hires can come from those boomerang hires who figure the grass was going to be greener, and as it turns out, it isn't. They'll come right back to you if you invest in maintaining that relationship. So let's summarize our 6 main takeaways. Today's job seekers are eager to work. They're casting wide nets, with the majority looking for more than 11 jobs simultaneously. They value more than just pay. It's got to be more than just a paycheck. They're looking for ease and speed in the process, and they're looking to do it on their mobile phone, on the go. All of this together, combined with the fact that 3/4 of employees say they're loyal to their employer, creates a blueprint for success here. We want to connect with people where they are. We want to sell them a job opportunity that's more than just a paycheck. We make it really easy for them to follow the process, and they'll give us that loyalty and their best effort. And that's really what it's all about. Now, while I did offer some advice throughout this presentation, I did want to give you some clearer takeaways. So most of what you can do in response to everything we covered can be summarized into 3 categories: speed, quality, and intelligence. So quality first. 10 quality candidates applying to your job is better than 100 poor quality candidates. So applicant volume is not the solution. It's quality applicants at volume. So we're aiming for quality over quantity by first creating and marketing roles that top talent actually wants. The best of the best, as we've discussed now, have dozens of opportunities to work. So you really need to offer what they're looking for, whether, again, that's flexibility, culture, or career growth. And reaching quality candidates also means diversifying your sourcing channels. So reimagined employee referral programs, rich content on your career site, and a presence on leading job boards can help you cast that wide net that helps you reach the very best. Now to speed. We also know from the data that top talent gets hired fast. Optimize your processes so that you can not only capture the best job seekers the moment they apply, but also quickly move them through a fast vetting and selection process and get to that hiring decision as soon as possible. Remember, 3 days or sooner is the expectation. That means exploring mandates for response times, holding managers accountable for hitting those times, and embracing tools that allow you to automate manual hiring work and operate more efficiently. Gives you what you need to communicate with candidates quickly and move them through the process. And finally, intelligence. Much of the quality and speed related tactics discussed are really difficult to manage without a baseline knowledge of what's working and what isn't working. So you've got to track these key metrics in your hiring process, such as sourcing efficiency, which channels are driving the most hires, and process adherence, which is how fast is your team able to react to key milestones in the hiring process? Are they even following the process, and are they doing it quickly enough? From there, you can identify bottlenecks and opportunities for improvement and adjust your efforts accordingly. So it's not enough to just move and find quality applicants. You've got to move quickly. And then if you really want to make this a strategic pillar of your business operations, and I would argue there's really no option to not do that, you've got to be able to manage it, and you can't manage it if it's not measured. That's where intelligence comes in. And that's all I have for you today in this quick discussion on hiring success. There's an email address here on the slide. If you want to know about more about our team here at Hireology and the technology we provide that helps you do the things we discussed today, we'd love to talk with you. We've also got copies of the research, these slides, or really anything else you'd like to talk about. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lois for any questions we might have.
Well, thanks, Adam, for that interesting and helpful information about this very important topic. And now we would like to turn it over for questions and answers session. So if anyone with a question can type it in now using the questions and answers tab on the left, and we'll get to as many questions as we can in the remaining minutes. Any questions we don't get to during this session, we'll follow up with you afterwards. Our first question, what makes hiring in long-term care so unique compared with other industries?
Well, I think it's really a combination of three things. I mean, number one, there's a credentialing component to this industry that puts a cap on the labor supply, right? There's only so many CNAs in the US that can be hired, so many nurses that can be hired. And you juxtapose that with the record demand and this gray wave that we're looking at over the next 30 years and beyond. And what you've got is a historic level of demand that's growing more than 10% a year, combined with a historic low supply of labor that's restricted by credentialing requirements. And so those two things together, combined with the third thing, which is, in general, state or federal mandates for coverage levels, and you've really got this perfect storm of historical demand, historic low supply, and fairly onerous rules for how you run your facility from a staffing standpoint. All of those things together make this really tough. I mean, this has to be a core strategic part of your business model, this being your hiring strategy. Because nothing happens without a full roster. All right, you just can't get where you need to go as a business without having the people there. And all of those things together across all the industries that I have experience in, I have never seen a more acute challenge in hiring than is faced in the long-term care market.
Thank you. Another question, why do you think job seeker expectations have changed so much in recent years?
Well, so you think about the supply and demand curve that I've referenced. When we have more job seekers than jobs open, and that feels like it's been a while since that's been true. More job seekers than job openings. The employer can gloss over a lot of the holes in their process, right? They can afford to just take more time. Job seekers can't be as exacting with their requirements, but we don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world where we've got 2 jobs for every 1 person looking, and so people can be picky. Second, I think the pandemic has ushered in, as we all know, an era of expectation around schedule flexibility and when and how we work that I think is here to stay. And so job seekers have their pick of opportunities, and they've also been conditioned over the last 3 years to demand flexibility. And they'll be able to continue to do that because the supply shortage for talent in this industry is not going anywhere anytime soon. And when I say that, I mean, looking out 10 plus years, I just don't see this changing. And so it's really imperative for employers that are struggling with this to dig into the root causes, which is, often a lack of flexibility, a lack of understanding in career growth, or a lack of a feeling that the organization they work for is giving them meaningful job opportunities.
Can you talk a little bit more about how to build a culture that is attractive to job seekers?
Yeah, I mean, the culture, as I mentioned in my comments, it really starts at the top. And, an organization has to define, step one in this process, define who you are and what you stand for. And that really comes through in your organization's core values. The core values, way I like to describe them as really the rules of the road for how we conduct ourselves in this company. And fewer are better. Once you get north of 5 or 6 core values, they start to water down. And they have to be real. They can't just be words on a plaque in the lobby. Core values done right means you make hiring, firing, and performance management decisions based on the values of the organization. Core values should serve as the rules of the road for those gray area moments in the course of one of your associates' days. So, if something comes up where they could make a decision that goes one way or the other, if you're reinforcing your company's values, that employee should know in that moment what to do. They should pick the thing congruent with the values of the business. And if you're teaching and training that way, and building a workplace where people know, hey, if you're using good judgment and you're living our values, you really can't do wrong here. Live the values in your decision making. If those values are authentic, it self-perpetuates, right? And then, you're attracting people who are a fit for the values of the business. They like the values, they stay. More people come in, your retention rate goes up. Conversely, if your organization has watered down values or worse values that aren't stated, really not by design but by default, it's really tough to build a high performance, high retention culture at scale over time because the rules of the road aren't known. There's really no North Star example to follow, and it's almost impossible. And then you get culture by default, not by design. And really that's, it's important to break that cycle. If you find yourself there, step one is take a look at the values. Ask yourselves, are they real? Are they meaningful? Are they communicated, and are they reinforced?
Thank you. Another question, what advice do you have for us getting even more out of our employee referral program?
Well, it's a great question. I bet everyone on this call, with a few exceptions, of course, has an employee referral program. The problem with employee referral programs is that, generally speaking, it's really clunky, right? It's hard for your team members to submit referrals. It's hard for them to know what the status of the referral is, and it's hard for them to know when they're going to get paid for making the referral. That's from the employee standpoint. From management standpoint, it's just hard to manage and track. I mean, usually there's a spreadsheet floating around somewhere that makes its way to the payroll office every now and then. It's just onerous. And when a business process is hard to follow on both sides, it's just not going to be done at scale. You're not going to be able to get what you could be getting out of the process because it's just too hard to use, it's too hard to manage. And so most employee referral programs languish due to a lack of efficiency on both sides. Think of your employee referral program as a consumer-driven program. How are you going to make it as easy as possible to give employees the ability to submit referrals? There's really two keys to this. Number one is consistent marketing and messaging, right? You can, for example, through our referral platform, sync your payroll roster and set campaigns, letting people know exactly how to submit referrals, what the bonus is, and how to refer. And so with those campaigns, you also add a component that makes it really easy to do this through an automated text messaging platform. And so we're not emailing resumes. I'm not getting somebody to go to a career site and submit a resume. I should literally be able to text them and have them follow an automated process so that, it's not adding to anyone's workload to drive a referral or to manage this process. And then on the back end, you want those payouts to be synced to payroll. And so, we of course, do those things. Would be glad to talk with you more about that. But the benefits are clear. Our top facilities using this platform are generating nearly 40% of their hires through their employee referral program. And before using the platform, we found that number averaged more like 10%. And they did nothing other than add technology that automated the process and made it really easy. So, my moral of the story here today is that you don't really have a recruiting issue. What we have in this industry is generally a marketing response rate problem. People want to work. They're out there. They're finding roles. They're going to work for those employers that tell the story, that make it easy to apply, and that make that process really seamless, and then onboard people at a high level of quality. Easier, of course, said than done, but that is the recipe for success. And employee referrals play a really critical role in that. Referrals are your lowest cost option and your highest performing cohort, as well as your highest retention cohort. And so getting the referral process right is absolutely critical. And we'd love to talk more to you about that.
Another question, considering the increasing role of automation in the hiring process, how can we strike a balance between leveraging technology and maintaining a personalized candidate experience?
Yeah, the rule of thumb, I like to suggest is the process-related steps in your hiring process, right? Responding, scheduling interviews, reminding someone that the interview's tomorrow, following up the day before with information on where to go, all of those process-related steps, those can and should all be automated so that they're done, right? They're done consistently and they're done on time. We want to take all the time we're spending in moving people manually through some steps, and we want to invest that time into quality conversations between two human beings, your hiring manager and that job seeker. And what we find is if you automate the manual tasks, you can allocate more time toward having meaningful conversations and still have time left over from what you were doing before. So you spend less time on this process, giving you more time back to do your day job, right, more or less, and leading to better recruiting results. And so, people just don't like being interviewed by robots, right? So I'm not a huge proponent of automated interviewing. I really think automated interviews have a place in some organizations for some specific roles, but for these skilled labor roles, those conversations are your opportunity to put your best foot forward. And I just believe fundamentally, and it shows up in the data, that doing that live between two people is really the way to go.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions today. If we didn't get to your question during this session, we'll follow up with you afterward. We hope you found this webinar helpful. There are 3 more sessions today, with the next one starting at noon Eastern Time. It's titled Myth Busting: How the Right Partner Actually Can Boost Your 5-Star Staffing Rating. I hope you'll join me there. This session and other sessions of today's Workforce Development Forum will be available shortly to listen to again online at mcknights.com/062223 Workforce Development Forum. Feel free to share this address with colleagues who would be interested in this topic. You'll be able to log into this platform again through the way you did today. We'd like to give special thanks to our speaker for this session, Adam Robinson, for being with us today to share these important insights. And thanks to our sponsor, Hireology. You can visit Hireology.com to learn more about the company. This is Lois Bowers, editor of McKnight Senior Living. On behalf of everyone at McKnight Senior Living, McKnight's Long-Term Care News, and McKnight's Home Care, I'd like to thank you for attending.